There used to be this dialogue in pop culture and society that record labels were evil. It was just this thing that was, it came from like the 80s and 90s where record labels would spend all this money to promote a record, and not even to promote a record. They would sign a band and they would spend this money on photo shoots and elaborate dinners where they would entertain their friends and important people. And they would claim all of these expenses on an artist or an artist's album. And so as recoupable expenses. And so what would happen in the 70s and 80s, there'd be all this, prostitutes and drugs and alcohol and fine foods and hotel stays and everything would be put against the income from the artists on the label. So if you made $1 million, if an artist made $1 million in album sales, CD or vinyl sales or tape sales back then, but the label spent $2 million on all these things I mentioned, then you still owe them $1 million and they never have to pay you any royalties. So that's where this, and I don't know how often that happened. I think it happened quite a lot, especially with the majors. Probably didn't happen at the indies as much. There wasn't really that many big indies at the time, but that's one of the reasons why independent labels came onto the scene, is to put an end to that, or to kind of reshape how the music industry is done. And I think that's where this idea that record labels are evil came from, is from that imaginary era. And we even see, it wasn't imaginary, but how we remember that, or how we've heard tales of that era from the 70s and the 80s and in the 90s and 2000s even, really. But obviously when the gatekeeper's power was stripped away, when we could start to home record our own music, and then eventually retail brick and mortar stores weren't that big of a deal, and digital overtook physical sales in one way or another. And now the average Joe can record and release a song on the same platform, Spotify or Apple Music, that a major artist is trying to get on, and can even get on the same playlist or on the same radio channel. So the playing field has almost been leveled. And so that's one of the great things about independent record labels today, is that we have this opportunity to kind of write our own future and redefine record labels, because a lot of people think the record labels are evil. Now, I know our audience and a lot of independent artists in the know, and independent artists who have worked with indie labels who are artist-centric, artist-focused, artist-led, all those good things. They know that mantra of record labels being greedy and evil is not the case anymore. But in the general public, that's still kind of seen. And so I know I work with a lot of record labels, and I work with people thinking of starting a record label. And when they're talking to their friends and family, that old myth of record labels being greedy and evil starts to rear its ugly head again. And so it's kind of a challenge for us as independent record labels, even as independent artists, to kind of just rewrite the definition of a record label, and to be more artist focused, and to be generous, and to be kind, and to keep our expenses down, and to help artists create a sustainable career. I think that's really important. When I picture record labels now, I think of the friends and the people that I've met on the podcast, and the people that I've interviewed. And these are people with part-time jobs to make ends meet. These are people who are artists themselves. When we look back to the picture of the record labels in the 70s and the 80s and 90s, they're run by suits. They're run by people who maybe weren't even artists in the first place, that they're hired on to make lots of money and not to make great art. And so that's such a beautiful thing about independent record labels today, is that we're completely redefining this label of what it means to be a record label. I think that's so great. I love record labels, you know that. And if you're on this channel, you love record labels too. Please give me your thoughts, comment, and let me know how we can redefine what it means to be a record label, and do away with that old myth. Leave me a comment below, and please subscribe to this channel, and come to our website where we have resources for record labels. Go to otherrecordlabels.com.